Hey, how's it going? Ryan Falkenrath here, Set the Pace Triathlon. I am answering your questions this week as part of the Ironman Certified Coach team. And we are in class of 2021, and we are talking to Ashton, who's asked a question about lives in northern Utah and he's doing Ironman Coeur d'Alene, which is, as he's alluded to, a little bit of it's very scenic, but it's also very challenging. There's going to be a lot of climbing in there, long, steep kind of grades. Not typically in what he's alluded to. He can handle steep, shorter, harder climbs, but when it comes to this race course, it's going to be a little bit different terrain than probably he's used to because he's probably more adept at that type of climbing, shorter, steeper, where you can just power over it and get to the other side because maybe that's what he has locally. So when you're riding a lot, that's what you're good at typically. So his question is, how can he get prepared for Ironman Coeur d'Alene, going from short, punchy, steep climbs to kind of long, drawn out, either kind of medium grades to a little bit larger grades, and make it through race day? And what should he be doing in his training? Because right at this time, we're in November, middle of November, so Ironman Coeur d'Alene is in June. So he's got a little bit of time to work on it. So really, not really building up in distance or anything quite yet. But while you're getting there, a couple ideas for you. Now, I've done Ironman Lake Tahoe in 2013. It's about 8,500 feet of climbing. That was my first Ironman race. I knew nothing about doing Ironman races, knew nothing about doing recon and picking an event to do for my first Ironman. Thought it was, hey, this is a great scenic area. Let's go do it. So Coeur d'Alene is probably in the same boat. It's a nice, beautiful, scenic area, but it's going to be a tough course. So be prepared. But in my training, what I did is locally, we had enough hills that I would go out and find one that took me about 10 minutes to climb up. And I did that for an hour starting out. And eventually I got up to 2 hours. I'd climb up the hill, turn around, ride back down, turn around, ride up again. Did that for 2 hours. It was not fun at all. I think the average speed was like 8 miles an hour. It was just not exactly the best training days out there, but it got me ready for race day. I don't think there would have been a way I would have got through that race without doing that specific training. So I at least knew enough to go out there. And if you have terrain local to you that is going to be similar to that, long grades that you can spend 10, 5 minutes even, and go out there and just ride it up, ride it down, ride it up, ride it down, ride it up, ride it down. That's going to be one of your workouts per week. Going out and riding the terrain is going to be similar to race day. Now, the other side of that is if you don't have terrain that's kind of useful for that purpose, you can do it virtually. You've got Zwift, you've got RuVAR, you've got all different types of platforms that you can find the course on. So RuVAR, you can go on there and you can search courses. I would imagine somebody along there has put on Ironman Coeur d'Alene course. You can download it and ride it. So that'd be great, longer training days if you're in the basement, put it up, go ride it. Zwift has plenty of courses with tons of climbing on there. So you can pick one and just climb a mountain until you want to puke in a bucket. So you could get the training if you needed it virtually. If you don't have a smart trainer, you can go with, a fluid trainer, magnetic trainer, if whatever you got, if you got one, and just, go through and do higher resistance for extended periods of time. So that's the first tip is find terrain, either local or find terrain either virtually that you can practice on, because practice is going to be the key. The second part is when you're actually doing the hill climbs, you're right. You can't just speed it up, punch it up over the hill, and get up to the top and then ride the momentum on the other side. So you can't do that because these hills are going to be long enough that you're going to run out of steam trying to do that, and you're going to burn yourself out in the first half of the bike ride, and the rest of the race is going to be a train wreck for you. So I recommend for my athletes is when you get to that bottom of the hill and you're going to start that steep climb, find a gear where you can keep a good tempo. I like to see 85 to 90 RPM. So whatever gear you got to be in to be able to do that, to get that turnover. The key is to get the turnover, because once you get to the point where you're stomping on the pedals and you're engaging, the large muscle groups and you're putting force on those pedals, you're going to burn yourself out. So the first hill you do that, you might be okay. Second hill, you might make it through. The third, fourth, fifth, you're going to burn yourself out, and it's going to be tough if you're trying to mash the pedals and grind the gears up a hill. So I like to see athletes get to that 85, 90 RPM, and keep it below, if you're going by power on the bike ride and you're going by 75% of your FTP is kind of your target, you're way below that. You're probably like 60. percent of your FTP to go up that hill. So you're dialing down the gear so you have less resistance. You have to apply less force to the pedals, get them to turn, but you're turning a little bit faster. So you're still producing power, but you're finding a nice cadence of where you can keep it going. So, like I said, if you can't find the terrain, you can also do structured workouts, either on Zwift or on your Garmin. Have that run your smart trainer if you got one, and you're just doing power sets, and you're finding a nice comfort zone where you're spinning a little bit higher, probably than you normally would, at a higher resistance, to just try to get used to being able to keep a higher tempo going up a hill with a little bit more power. So that way you don't burn yourself out. You use a little bit less, it's more momentum, if I can explain it that way, to kind of keep going up that hill. So you've got the momentum in your legs to carry them over to keep those pedals going, so you don't use as much energy and strength trying to push those pedals to get up the hills. So that's my kind of suggestions for that, is find the terrain either locally and just go ride hills that are going to be similar to that and figure out a good tempo to ride it up, or it's going to be find it virtually. You could do it on a platform, you could do it structured workouts, you could do it, download a course to your Garmin Edge device and now run your trainer. If you got a smart trainer, if you got a classic trainer, you can go out there and up the resistance on there and then try to get to a nice 85, 90 RPM. And then that's just going to be the key, is going and practice in the kind of terrain you're going to ride on. And then maybe finding, if you're using power, to find out, what that 60-65% power range is, and then find out what gearing you need in order to keep about 85, 90 RPM to be in a continuous situation where you're gradually making it up the hill. So as you practice that, and you've got more than 6 months, as you practice that, you'll get more and more efficient at applying that power at that tempo to get up over your hills. And hopefully on race day, it's not that big of a deal. If my goal is, for my athletes, is race day is not nearly as hard as the hardest workout in training that you've done. So hopefully that helps you out. If you got any questions, put them in the comments, and happy training out there.